David Van Olmen.
Beg your pardon. Sorry, Matt.
Yep, no problem. So we got David Van Olmen from the BC government. We've got Jim Zaffino and Crystal from RDOS. From RDOS director side, we have Ron Oberek. Sorry, gray moment there. Who is that guy? And then we have our other committee members. We also have two, it looks like we have two observers, Judy Garner and John Cote. Judy and John, do you mind just sort of showing your face just so we can see who we're dealing with? And I don't mind if you want to change yourself afterwards. If you want to go dark afterwards, that's fine, but it's nice to put a face to a name. Anyway, if you get a moment as time goes on, I'd love to see who we're dealing with. So John and Judy will have opportunity to ask questions at the end. As has been shown to us, the meeting is being recorded. Again, as often the case, it helps if you mute yourself, and periodically Alan may mute us all, just so that we have to deliberately take ourselves off mute to minimize the background chatter, sirens in the background, etc. Yeah, and you know, I've been thinking, I think there's, we've all got a lot to bring to the table here. One thing I'd like to offer, and I just thought of this earlier on in the day here. So Ron, you have a lot to bring to the table. I want to ensure that you get that on the table. So what I'm going to suggest is after we get a presentation on a key point, I'm going to ask you if you've got anything further to add, okay? And then we'll go into the committee chat after that. All right, so that's the housekeeping over and done with. We have an agenda that was circulated by Crystal. I'll take a motion to that the agenda for September 8th for the Electoral D Service and Boundary Configuration Committee be approved. If somebody wants to make that. Don't all jump at once. Okay, thanks, Kay. Yeah, thank you. Can I have a seconder? Okay, I got Vi Creasy. I'll call the question right away. All those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion's carried. I don't, minutes. Minutes were circulated separately from the package. You should have received them. I'll take a motion that the minutes of August 18th, Electoral Area D, Service and Boundary Configuration Committee be received as circulated. Somebody would like to make that. We'll go ahead. Okay, that's made by David, seconded by Kay. I will ask if there's any discussion on the minutes before we call the question. No. Right, seeing none, call the question. All those in favor of accepting the minutes as received? Okay, that motion's carried. And I would just love to see the rest of the meeting go nice and smooth like that. That's good, yeah. I'm going to turn it over to Alan and Sherry. We've got basically 4 key areas, as I see it, that they're going to be speaking to us on. One is speaking notes. Second is the process and our project within that process, and any remaining issues we may have with respect to that, or how can we communicate where we're at in that process. Third, communications and engagement. And fourth, services. So, Alan, Sherry.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, committee members. Sherry's going to run through the materials this evening for us. We've got them. I can put them on screen here. I think everybody's had a chance to see them in the package. But I will put them on screen if folks want me to. Maybe I'll start by doing that, and then we can just go to any parts that we may need. Everybody see that? Oh, there we go. So Sherry, over to you.
Yep. Okay. Thanks. The first thing that we have shared with you here is just a draft. Last meeting, we spoke about maybe providing some speaking notes for the committee to reference, that might be helpful for committee members. So we've just provided a draft. We've tried to just jot down some of the parts. You might even recognize some of them if you remember. Some of them are kind of from the RFP, some of them are from the proposal, and we just wanted to sort of keep it as simple as possible and keep it to some of the facts in case committee members wanted to be able to reference it. Yeah, but fairly self-explanatory, goes through the purpose, what's involved, the process, the engagement, some timelines, and the committee composition. Happy to expand on some of it, or if anyone has any comments on something they'd like to see added or changed or removed. I don't particularly think it needs to be much longer than 2 pages. It's probably a good amount of for a quick reference document. But again, we want this tool to be helpful for the committee members. So yeah, just open to comments on anything that you'd like to see here or see changed.
Sherry, the only thing I can think of after reading it is that I've had this conversation now with several people about why are we not looking at what the cost is going to be beforehand? So if there's some way that you can address that, because I understand that it depends on what services we choose and what the boundary are, but I'm having a hard time giving that feedback to people.
Okay. So do we want something in, I mean, we could put something in the speaking notes, or we can also answer that like as on the website as an FAQ, like we were, I mean, we generally use the FAQ whenever someone submits a question, we then answer it, but we could start with some of the questions, maybe even that the committee has that we're having a hard time answering, and answer those on the website, and then we can just continue to direct people to the website. That's just one option, or we can put something in the speaking notes.
I think that's a great idea, but it wouldn't hurt in the speaking notes as well. But I think that's a really excellent idea that you had about even just having the committee members' questions on there.
Okay. Matt, did you have something to add to that?
Well,
or you had your...
Yeah, I think probably given the number of inquiries we've had even within our own committee about cost, probably we should have something in there.
In there being
in the speaking notes.
Okay.
And probably other places as well. But I think in terms of the actual discussion on that, personally, I would like to see that discussion take place in our next item, where we're really talking about the process and what's included in in this section of the study, as opposed to the next one.
Okay, I can just add a note saying that we want to reference a question about costs, and then also maybe we maybe at the end when we're talking about communication, maybe we can go through, if we have enough time, brainstorm a few of the questions that we might want to start and include in the FAQ.
The other thing I was wondering, Sherry, is if we could talk about where these community meetings are going to be. That way, that's just one more way for people to put that on their calendar to make sure that they're there.
Okay. So having the sort of planned location, which we'll need feedback on the community, or from the committee on that, but if in case we want to refine that, but so even before we have dates or anything like that, just saying, in these 5 communities we're anticipating having, or 6, or whatever we want to adjust it to.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I think that would be very helpful.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Kay is asking questions.
Okay, yeah, okay. Yes, Kay, go ahead.
There I am. I just had some comments about some of the language and some of the wording, and I don't know if you just want me to send you the possible suggestions. For instance, the second bullet where it says to understand the concerns of interest, I think in order to understand them, first we need to explore, or we need to learn about what those concerns are and then seek to understand. So that's the first one. That's with regards to the second bullet. With regards to what the study will involve, the word appetite is used twice in the first bullet, and I would suggest that the second appetite use the word level of interest as compared to two appetites. And then the second last bullet in the still under what the study will involve, I would suggest that that bullet, that the order of the things, of the items may benefit from being rearranged, because right now we're learning about the high impact of incorporation before we're learning about what incorporation involves or what the study would entail. So I'm just thinking that maybe the order of those need to be redone so there's more of a logical sequence with regards to that. And then on the second page, with the very first bullet where it says a third stage of the study will involve some technical analysis, I just suggested removing the word some. It involves technical analysis. And that was just my comments with regards to that.
Okay, thank you. Maybe if it would be helpful actually if you could send me an email with those, but I think I got them down, but yeah, I'd appreciate if you forward that. That would be great.
Just, would it make it easier for you to comment if you circulated a Word version so that she can just use track change? And
Yeah, whatever's easiest for you, Kay. I'm happy to do either.
It would be easier if you sent me a Word version and then I could just make the suggestions right on there. Thanks.
Okay, others, any other comments, suggestions, things that are missing?
I'm just wondering, I know, Bob, you've put some time into sort of thinking about what speaking notes might include as well. Do you have any sense of anything we're missing from your crack at it? And take yourself off mute. You're on mute, Bob.
Okay, I'm muted now. No, I drew out just sort of some sketchy ideas, but I think every one of them has been covered within here. And I appreciate Kay's comments about sequencing some of the language in there. But other than that, no, I think it's a good document. And we don't have to commit to memory, but just to have it handy is a good reference. So we're all on the same page with that. I think it's good. Thank you.
Yeah, that is the, thanks, Bob, the intended purpose, right? It's just intended as a tool for committee members to be able to reference. So whatever works for you. And if yeah, so if you guys are okay with me just getting the extra comments from Kay and making some of those changes, as well as looking to add something referencing cost, and we will be, sounds like, speaking a little bit more about this, but yeah, I can make those changes and then circulate back to the committee.
So Ron, how about yourself? Comments on speaking notes?
Thank you. I'm good, Matt. Thank you. Nothing.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, sounds like you're through.
Next. All right. Alan, do you want to put up the second, just the flow charts? Make that.
1 second here. I'm just, this is where the technical prowess is lacking. There we go.
All going quite smoothly. You're doing well.
Yes.
Yes. So last meeting, we also referred to maybe coming up with some graphics about, how to try and explain the process, where we are in the process, as well as the incorporation study process, which we are not in yet, but sort of to give people an idea of what the steps are. So I've started here. This might not be quite what we were looking for, but I thought we'd start with something to start the discussion. So what we've prepared here is a flow chart for two different processes. One is what the ministry would normally term a restructure process. So this process applies both to those of you who were familiar with the last time we went through this in 2016, when you guys undertook a restructure study, which looked at governance and services for what at that time was Area D, but has since been split into two. So that was kind of one of the outcomes of that restructure process. And then this process that we're undertaking now, the outcome is more likely to be some recommended boundaries in case we want to move forward with, or RDOS wants to move forward with an incorporation study. But it still follows a lot of the same process that, sorry, Ellen, can you just go back to that last one? So the boundary study is still considered kind of a restructure process. So it still follows that same sort of timeline where you're trying to understand, learn about and understand what those issues are, identify solutions. So where communities are interested and have issues that could potentially be resolved through incorporation, we look at the boundary and we think, yeah, it makes sense to include them in because they've got something that, this could be a benefit for them to look at incorporation and being part of that boundary. So even though the boundary is kind of what one of our outcomes might be, the process is quite similar to what we went through last time. And again, to a broader restructure process, that's sort of from the ministry's standpoint, that's what this study is. And then now you can go to the next one, please, Alan. And then so that blue study, so that restructure process, again, at the end of the day, if we spit out a boundary and we say, yes, we've looked at this and we think that this boundary makes sense. And within that boundary, we are interested in looking at incorporation. Then you go to the ministry and say, hey, we're interested in an incorporation study. Are you interested in funding it? And you end up kicking off this incorporation process. So that's what this larger flow chart is intended to show, sort of the steps that the incorporation process would involve. And then again, we talked about last time also just illustrating some of the off ramps. So if you aren't interested, when do we get out of that process? So that's what the red arrows are intended to show. So again, I don't know if this is what exactly you were interested in, or if you want to see other details of the process, or you want to know more specifically, where does this boundary part fit into it? But anyway, I thought I'd start with this, and this is again based on sort of the ministry, how the ministry would normally look at the two processes. So one being a restructure process, and then how it feeds into an incorporation process. So why don't I start talking there and see what comments you have about how this relates to what you were hoping to see or what you were hoping to learn from the graphic.
Looks like we have Kay there.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I can't see everyone, so.
Yeah.
With regards to the first one of the things that I think would be helpful to tie in the third piece that says determines community support for solutions, tying in the language of restructure or boundary into legislative changes, so that, because that's my understanding, is that it would take a legislative change in order for a boundary in order for there to be a incorporation. Is that correct?
In it, there's a letters patent would be created. There are legislative aspects for sure, and cabinet approval and that type of thing. If you've gone to incorporation study, but that's not necessary. Not every restructure process would end up with a legislative solution, right? Like if you don't know what the restructure process is intended to look at what are the issues that you have and what are the potential solutions. And like when we went through the one in 2016, some of the solutions were things that the regional district already has the authority to do. Those types of solutions didn't need any legislative changes. The one option that came out with dividing Area D into two, which was something that did end up being pursued and approved, that was the one part that did need a legislative solution, but not all restructure studies will end up with solutions that need legislative changes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And David's on the line too from the ministry and is welcome to join in and jump in anytime I'm overstepping my bounds here, and anything that you can add to the conversation that if I've said something or misspoken.
No, I was going to say something in terms of legislative process, but you covered it well. And thanks.
Thanks, David. Matt, I can see your hand.
Okay. I'm gonna look at the second page and suggest that I think the first 4 boxes are part of a second study, which we've loosely been referring to as a cost benefit incorporation study. So I'm just wondering if those could be one color, and then clearly the referendum is not part of a study. So that's maybe a different, that's step 3. And then the final box on the right is step 4. And maybe those should be different colors. So, you know,
Yeah.
We've got our blue and our tan, and then boxes 5 and 6 are 2 separate colors as well. And it's really phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. And David and others may carve it up differently, but I don't think we should be calling all of those 6 boxes implying that they're all part of the same process.
Same study. I mean, they're part of the same process, but not, yeah, you're right.
They are part of the same process.
Yeah,
They're not
but
part
not
of the
the
same
study.
study.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No,
I agree with that. The last box would be the end goal. That's the finish line, as it were. That's incorporation. And then you hit the nail on the head as well, Matt, when it came to the referendum piece, is the voting yes or no on incorporation. So yeah, that would be incorporation study has been complete. The provincial restructure offer has been shared with the public, so the public can digest the costs at that point for the municipal boundary, the costs within limits of the boundary, which we'll probably explore a bit later today. And that will be those folks, the residents that live in that proposed boundary, that will be their final decision, looking at that package, thinking about all the discussions that's been going on and through this entire process, and then voting at the referendum.
Okay. And then I guess I'm just wondering if there shouldn't be, again, David, is there another box between referendum and incorporation? Again, just because it's a completely separate action, cabinet approval.
The cabinet approval actually comes from the provincial restructure offer in terms of the provincial support for the potential incorporation. Is that provincial support is, well, very obviously given through the provincial restructure offer, saying, okay, you have gone through the process, the people have talked about it, here is the restructure offer to go along with your final decision. So after that referendum vote is a yes, the province would take that positive incorporation vote and work towards the legislation piece towards incorporation.
Okay.
Sorry, Matt, did that help?
Well, yeah, it does. And I'm just listening to your words, and you're using very defined words. And I'm just thinking that I think this is a great start, and I'd like to see your input to it.
Sorry, do you mean right now?
No, just over the next little while, maybe you can take a look at just adding or tightening or making sure we've got the right choice of words.
Absolutely, I can do that.
Yeah. And I guess I'm tripping over myself. Another person we need to hear from here at this point probably is Ron as well. Ron, any comments or thoughts on these?
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Chair. A side comment first. Kurt Hebert's been having trouble joining the meeting. I've been trying to help him by sending him the email that came out earlier today with the link, but I don't know if anybody can help sending him something, because I'm failing terribly. I've tried a couple times and not having any success.
Well, Alan and Sherry, you can chair, and Ron, you can contribute, and I'll get the link on to Kurt.
Thank you so much. And then the comment arising from what's before us, I'd like to make an offer to the committee and to the consultants, and I don't know if it would be of benefit, but as we go forward, I've noted in past meetings, the consultants have indicated from time to time that they don't know our area well. They know other areas like Blind Bay Sorrento quite well. And I'd like to offer, if there's any value, I'd be happy to take the consultants on a 4-hour tour of our area. I could show them just how different Vassal Lake is from McLean Creek Road and Upper Carmi and areas. And I don't know if there's value in the consultants having that understanding. And of course, there may be a cost and for the committee here to consider that. So with respect to the process, if that happened earlier in the process, I think what it might do is really help when those neighborhood meetings are being had, and we have some understanding about what makes those different communities unique. And we've got at least 10 I can think of. And so that's my comment. And I'd like to throw it back to the committee for discussion. I know we've tried hard to get committee members who come from different parts of the community. And I'm curious if that would be something that would have value, and if not, that why not, perhaps, is a question, but I'd be curious to hear what the committee and what the consultants think. Thank you.
I'm happy to hear what the committee would like. I mean, for myself, I have done the tour. I'm happy to do it again. I did the tour with Bob and a few of the other committee members in 2016, and we went to every community, and each representative at that time who was on the committee would meet with us and take us through the consultants at the time for that study, myself and a few of my colleagues, and we visited Upper Carmi and Vassal and Skaha Estates and Heritage Hills, but we were also doing the other side and Apex and Clayton and Okanagan Falls. And so I've done the tour before. Granted, that was about 5 years ago now, so it has been a while, and I'm sure things have changed. I'm opening. Sorry.
Sorry, Sherry, I didn't mean to cut you
Yeah.
off there.
Yeah.
I have not done the tour, although I living in Kelowna, I spend and being a bit of an enophile, I do spend a fair bit of time in Okanagan Falls, but I would love to. I'd be very happy to do the tour if somebody's willing to give that. So thank you. And Matt?
Yeah, I'm just going to flag. Maybe that's an action item that we can get Crystal and Ron and myself can work on with the consultants, and those that are interested can. Those that already know it don't need to join. So as I see it, that's an action item that we can deal with. I don't know that we need to spend too much more time. It's an offer. It's a great offer. Let's see what we can do to act on it later.
So other comments on the what you'd like to see reflected in sort of a graphic about the process?
I just have a question, and that is the graphic looks good, and appreciate the comments being made. I think that that's helping to refine things. I'm just wondering, is this graphic the target group for this graphic? Is this graphic going to be on the website? Is it, where are we going to use it? Because we're having quite a bit of discussion about it. What does it mean? And the public is not going to have as much background as we do. So who are we targeting with this graphic? Is it just ourselves, the committee, or is this something that's going to be on the website?
That's a good question. And I think that's up to the committee. I mean, I know that it was raised last time as something that the committee wanted to see to understand. So that might be one audience, but I think if we can maybe get it to a place where it's sort of understandable enough, or maybe with some added text or whatever, if you think it'd be valuable to have on the website, then I think we should have it there as well. But yeah, we're open to comments on that. But yeah, really, when I put it together, the intention was to respond to questions that were coming up from the committee last time, but where we go with it after that is up to you.
Thank you for that.
And I will add that we have one place that I thought we certainly could incorporate it is that one of the in the proposal, we referred to some fact sheets, but then we referred to 3 things that we called incorporation insights. So 3 extra papers that dealt with sort of some issues that weren't necessarily fact sheets or particular services. But one of the ones that we talked about there was doing one about the incorporation study and what does an incorporation study involve and what are the steps in that. So maybe having this or some version of this in that spot might make sense as well. Yes, Matt?
Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment on the first chart. And I do see this as being something that could be helpful for the general public if we get it right. And I think this is a good start, but I think we should use some language that's specific to the study. So nowhere on that chart do I see anything that says boundary. So and in reality, the words are good in a way, in that they do walk you through the process, but in reality, if you look at it, I mean, it really could walk you through just about any process. So could we put something specific there so that they see that popping out the right-hand side of the diagram, we get boundary, and whatever services are going to be incorporated in that, just to tie it a little more closely to this Okanagan Falls Area D boundary configuration study. Because at the moment, I don't see any of those words.
Yep.
Matt, Bob has his hand up as well.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly what Matt said. If we're putting this out for the public's consumption, then they really do need to see that same language. Otherwise, this I think is a bit too vague. And I don't think it would be too difficult to throw, the words in, like boundary services, that kind of thing in there. And thanks for the input, Chance for it.
Okay, so would we, I'm happy to make those changes and have it reflect what this particular study is doing, sort of as a precursor to any future incorporation study process. And then I think, again, we can choose to put that on the website on its own. And then I think we will have or we certainly sort of had anticipated and had in the proposal to have a specific sort of fact sheet or incorporation insights that deals with the incorporation study process, where we can explain it in text, as well as having a graphic sort of, so we'll have an extra opportunity to have something, a document that's specifically focused on what to expect out of the incorporation study process should they enter it. So maybe yeah, we sort of use it twice.
Mr. Chair, we've got Mylene's got her hand up as well. And I apologize for cutting in there. I'm not sure that you can see everybody there. So,
Yep.
Mylene, yeah.
I was just wanting to ask the committee if this graphic is something that you would want to see in SCAHA Matters ad space in one of the coming up issues. The top bar and the bottom bar could be put over top of each other in a horizontal long ad space. That might be helpful to put out there, and then again drive people to hopefully go to the Regional Connections website for more information and to ask questions.
Sounds like a offer of some creative input there.
I think anything that helps to show that what the process is and how transparent we are trying to be is a good idea.
So finally, maybe when we come back next time with a revised version that looks specifically at what the boundary study is, what the outcome of the boundary study would be, and then and has the tweaks from Matt as well about phase 1, phase 2, you know, the different phases of the process, and maybe we can have another look at it then and see if it seems to make sense for SCAHA Matters at that time.
Yeah, for sure. Are we wanting to do that for the October issue? If so, we'll need to do that between the 15th to the 20th this month.
Well, if that is something that the committee wants, we could always circulate the changes, you know, prior to the meeting, because obviously our next meeting would be after that. Oh, sorry, did you say the 15th of, oh, 20th of this month, right, of September? Yeah, so yes, that would be prior to our next meeting. But I'm happy to do that if that's something that the committee would like to see in the SCAHA Matters next.
Well, I think, you know, we need to give some thought to what needs to go into SCAHA Matters and what needs to go into our sort of regular things. So you know, maybe that's part of the process that you're going to be talking about next, but we definitely need to figure out how and who is going to decide, you know, what are we going to chat about this month, you know. I think this is definitely one possibility, and I think it's worth noting, as Mylene has hinted at here, that she's got a deadline of what, the 20th of every month, I think, where, you know, she wants to have it pretty much nailed down, and she probably wants to see a draft. She always gets my draft about the 15th of the month, if not the 10th. So, but, you know, I'm sure she's probably like to see it in there a few days before that.
Okay, okay, so why don't we sort of just park that and we'll discuss it again when we talk about the communication process. Does anyone else have any comments on the graphics before we move to talk about communication? Sorry, Alan, I can't see everybody.
Well, actually, before we go on to communications, I think, you know, here, I mean, we're talking about the process. I think we need to visit this issue of cost. And And it's something that's, you know, some of our members are getting questions about it. Some of our members have got questions about it. And in my mind, the issue is, how much detail are we going to get in the course of this study? And can we look at that and can we rationalize that to ourselves, and can we understand why that's the way it is? And we're going to go into it in a deeper level in the next study. Now, that's what we're being asked to do, but I think this committee has to, you know, that's part of the process type question. That's probably the number one process question we've been wrestling with. So I think I want to hear from Alan and Sherry, and then maybe David and others before we open it up on that one.
Alan, you want to start, or are you waiting for me there?
Yeah, I beg your pardon. I was just sending Kurt another invite. So maybe Sherry, why don't you start and I'll pick up then after. So I was trying to do two things there at once. So I beg your pardon. Okay.
So from my perspective, and again, you'll hear from Alan and as well as David, but the process is designed, again, to listen to and hear from the concerns from the different areas first, because some areas, and just based on our experience in other communities, when we're doing sort of that initial study, which is more like this restructure study, we learn about different areas and find that either they don't have any concerns with either governance or service levels or services, and are pretty content with what they're getting. You know, they might still have some questions about it, but yeah. So that's kind of the first, to me, the first step in the process is, hey, these are the services that you get. Do you understand what services you get? This is what they cost. Are you having any issues? Because for communities that aren't having any issues, I just don't see that there's the rationale there to be asking the province to look at incorporation for areas that aren't having any, whether it be governance or service level issues. And I don't know why those communities would want to be part of an incorporation study, generally speaking, because incorporation typically costs communities more. But they're getting something different for what they end up paying for. But if you aren't having issues, usually the province isn't interested in funding the analysis and the detailed level of analysis that you need to go through to inform the community so they can vote on incorporation. So that's sort of my understanding of the initial part of the process, is figuring out what communities, what issues they might have. And then when you learn what issues they have, some of those might be able to be solved without incorporation. And some of them, really, that's kind of the right answer for them. If you want to solve them, this is the next step that you need to take, and it's incorporation. So let's explore that. But for the areas that really don't have those types of issues, or the issues that could potentially be solved by incorporation, I think that's what we're doing, is trying to understand what the right boundary is, because there might be communities that there's no point in including them in the study because they don't belong as part of the study. And so to do the detailed work to do the cost analysis, which is expensive and time consuming, and yeah, it just seems not necessary if there's no underlying issues. So that's my understanding of why the process is crafted the way it is. It's about learning the issues, learning who might have issues that would benefit or incorporation would make sense for, and then working from that base when you then do the detailed analysis that takes you, 18 months, 2 years. It's a long process to do all the detailed work, and it's a costly process. So I don't think we engage in it lightly. Takes a lot of the community's time to learn about it and understand, and the province invests a lot of money as well, and even to the end of coming up with a provincial offer and whatever. So by the time you're going through that level of work, you'd better be pretty sure you've got the right boundary. So I think that's that's again why you would go through this process first. But yeah, I don't know if I'm explaining it well or not, but Alan, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, no, I think you've covered all the bases there, Sherry. I think that it's the way I kind of look at it, and I understand that. I appreciate that it's frustrating for many communities that, particularly parts of Okanagan Falls, that have been looking at these issues now for a number of years, and that's not unique in the province, but it certainly is the case in Okanagan Falls. It is based on the premise that incorporation is one option to deal with certain governance and service issues, but it's only one option. As Sherry mentioned, the cost is significant to go down that road, and that in order to really know which options to look at and whether incorporation is a solution, the approach has always been by the province that let's first of all have a very clear understanding of what the issues are. And are those issues ones that are resolved through incorporation? And if they are, then let's proceed to incorporation. And if they're not, then we look at other options. David, do you have any thoughts on that? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, from a
No,
provincial.
We're going to
Oh,
hear
sorry.
from David, and then we're going to hear from Ron. So I've got you, Ron, and you were deliberately on my list right after the presenters, Ron. So Dave, you're next.
Thanks. So from a provincial perspective, everything that Alan and Sherry said is correct, where the province acts once a boundary is chosen because the province goes through a detailed analysis of basically what the province has already been servicing, such as roads and such as police costs. And it is a really detailed analysis, because the real question is, what is the boundary? In case of Area D, you have some potential boundary configurations that may include improvement districts, and that will totally change the cost as well. So to go through the exercise of trying to go through that level of analysis for all the possible boundary configurations, you're talking about a multitude of different cost formulas and potential cost impacts. And really all of that is just honestly still guesswork, right? So the numbers may change, and the numbers probably will change, and people, the residents, will focus on the numbers that come out, and you're going to have a very difficult conversation if those numbers change. That's the main one. The other one is, like I said, the municipal boundary. Once it's chosen, the province, not just my ministry, but there's the Ministry of Transportation, which looks at road costs. There's the Public Safety and Solicitor General, which looks at the police costs. And their trigger to analyze those costs is the recommended municipal boundary. Other than that, this process has been used for decades and has proven effective. So yeah, so this first phase, like Sherry was talking about, is really analyzing those issues and trying to minimize the potential no votes and to maximize the potential maybes and yeses in the proposed boundary, and then go into a deeper dive in terms of the costs. And that's why also the incorporation study has a much higher funding structure than a restructure study, because of that detailed cost analysis. Yeah, I think that's really the big thing. Yeah, we'll go to questions.
Okay, before we do, Ron, I invite you to say your piece on this issue.
Yeah, please. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I have a lot of comments arising, and in terms of order, it's challenging. So I'll try to begin
Well,
what David Van Omen said.
I'll be clear here. Just given the agenda, I'm going to say you've got 10 minutes. How does that
Thank
sound
you.
to get started with? Okay.
10 minutes is ample. Thank you very much.
All right, go for it.
With respect to David's comment, the process has been used before and has worked well. I appreciate the normal, how we normally do it answer, but I'm going to suggest, just for fun, that we open our minds to the possibility of doing better than before, better than normal. And I'm just throwing that up there as an idea, and hopefully you can have an open mind and think on it. With respect to what Alan said, thank you very much. And I noticed you agreed a lot with Sherry, and David agreed a lot with Alan and Sherry. Sherry, you made a comment that caused me concern. And your comment that caused me concern is you said, typically it costs is more. Now that is prejudicial. There's a prejudgment there. I don't know that it costs more. But when you say that, that's what you're saying. It is typically it's going to cost more. The question isn't typically will it cost more, but what will it cost in with respect to this particular process? I can tell everybody here that I have spoken to members of every corner of our community. I know where the boundary adjustments need to be done. I know the distinctions. I know Vassal Lake. I know what their concerns are. I know Upper Karma. I know what their concerns are. I know there's an opportunity to look at boundary adjustment up towards Sea Leader Ranch. There's 8 properties up there. Director Monteith from Coleton suggested should be in Area D. They have a better nexus than in Area I. I know McLean Creek Road. What I can tell all of you is everybody I've spoken to in all these communities in the past 3 years, all of them want to know the answer to the question of cost, notwithstanding what's normal, notwithstanding that it typically costs more, notwithstanding all of your experience. And the challenge that I see is the people who are needing this information, they want to know the answer. And it puts us in a tough spot to say, we're not going to tell you for the reasons I've just heard today. Now, I have spoken with Doug Finlater, the first mayor of West Kelowna. I've talked with former Mayor Harwood and current Mayor Blackwater in the community of Clearwater. I've gone to workshops where they've spoken. I've heard what they've said about the costs. So I'm a little up to speed on costs and what reality has looked like in those communities, what the reality looked like when they were incorporated, what the costs, what the change was like. We do have in this group today, Jim Zaffino, who was the first CFO in West Kelowna and the second CAO. And perhaps he could speak a little bit to the costs. He's done the software for the RDOS when he left the RDOS in 2008. He's working on new accounting software for the RDOS. He's done software for West Kelowna. He actually has a concept of what costs look like in an RDOS model of delivery of services and an incorporated model of delivery. He worked for Penticton. So I wouldn't mind hearing if Mr. Savino is willing to provide a short comment on the analysis of costs. And I'm going to throw a challenge out to the consultants and to staff, David Van Omen specifically with the province, Christy Malden, who's not with us today from the RDOS, but of course, Jim Zaffino, who is. Maybe we can do a better answer to this question of costs. Something that would be suited on an FAQ webpage and maybe better suited to the committee members when they get this question, which they will over and over again, something that will be a better answer than what I've heard today. And I don't mean to offend any of you, but I'm giving you honest, true feedback from this community, which I know well, which I know very well. So I hope Jim Zaffino might have a comment, and I don't know what the answer is, but between the consultants and the staff and the experts, maybe you can help us with an answer to that question. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Ron. Well done. It's only 5-2. So you're doing good. Thanks. Jim, you've got a couple of comments, do you?
I think I'd like to say what you guys need to hear. What I can envision is that if you do a cost before there's a complete boundary, there could be some issues. And I'll use 2 examples. One is, let's say you do the cost as if everybody is involved and everyone's included in the boundary, and the population is 5,010. That automatically triggers RCMP cost at a 730 split. So now you've got that which everyone, all of the people in that proposed boundary see a huge increase. That may not happen because at the end of the day, let's say the boundaries come in at 4,500. The RCMP component now is not there. Same thing with roads. You have the toll boundary, the road costs now are increased 20 to 30% because of the boundary. Now you have the new boundary that's ultimately going to be voting. Let's say it's a lot smaller. The costs are going to be smaller. So as far as the costs go, what I inherited in West Kelowna was that I was restricted to have 5% increase in taxes, which is not easy to establish because you're not only taking over services from the regional district, you're taking over services from the provincial government. So for every dollar that the tax increase for the new municipality, the taxpayer saves because they're not taxed by the provincial government. So there's a lot to this. And at the end of the day, you want an accurate proposed tax amount based on a specific boundary. So that's my comment.
Okay. All right. You got a rebuttal, Ron, and then we're going to move to the committee.
Yes, thank you very much. And just for the benefit of our committee members, our population's 4,198 as of last count, with the COVID restart monies received in December, which is the population that the province used, which I think is the most up-to-date number. We're not going to be at 5,010 or 4,500. We might be less than 4,198, and we might be a little bit more, but I doubt that. With respect to the point of roads and policing, those issues of cost are real important. People should have that information on a boundary review analysis, because when they're deciding, and I'm going to get to the point here, Vassal Lake as a community, they want to know what the difference is going to be on a boundary adjustment. Is their cost going to go up or down? Upper Carmi, same thing. What I have learned in other communities, and Mr. Zaffino mentioned it a moment ago, that they had a commitment to keep costs under 5%. I know Clearwater, at the workshop at the SILGA conference 2019, they said the first thing they tell you is costs are going to go up. They say it's not true. That's what Mayor Harwood and Mayor Blackwater told a room full of people like myself who were interested in listening. They said it's not true, and they ran numbers and they showed what they did. And now, of course, we all know that a municipal council could raise taxes a lot, I guess, in theory. But what we all need to remember, I don't know how we communicate this, we're already paying taxes. We're already paying for services. When we analyze how other communities have done it, they've done it without increasing taxes significantly, contrary to what Sherry has suggested, that it costs more. And they've done it with great success in access to grants that they couldn't get to before because they didn't qualify. When you do the cost analysis on those two inputs, it's actually, you get more money to the community, not less, and higher value for money. So with respect to how we can address it, I think it falls short to tell the community, we're not going to tell you what the costs are. You have to determine the boundary first. I think we have to try harder to find an answer that gives a little better information to those people who are being asked to make a real important decision. I understand the difference, the benefits for Area D. When I look at Upper Carmi, I know what services they're getting. I've gone through 3 years of budget. I understand the differences. The people on this committee haven't been through that process, and the people in the community haven't. They don't understand the difference. And my question is, how do we as a committee doing this service to this community, how do we help them better understand so they can make a good decision? And maybe I'll finish with a question. Let's assume they all want to stay in the boundary. They get the costs on phase 2 and they say, now we don't want to. Can they back out? Obviously an off-ramp for the whole group, but can a community back out like Vassal Lake? Vassal Lake is a real hot issue, I think. Right now they're split. The South Shore is on Area C. The other 3 sides of the lake are in Area D. They want to know what the difference would be. Do they stay split? Do they all stay in C? Do they all stay in a leftover electoral area D? Do they join the municipality? That's a big issue for them on boundary adjustment. And they want to know, people I've talked to there want to know, what's the difference in cost? And how do you make the boundary decision if you're in the community when you don't know the answer? It's a tough one. And if I say to you, will you sell me your house, make a decision, yes or no? I'm not going to tell you the price. What's your answer? If I tell you the price and it's $100 million, you might say yes. If I say it's $2, you might say no. But if you don't know the price, notice how tough that is to put you in that spot. And that's what we're doing to our community. We're putting them in an unfair position by not giving them a fair answer to the question on cost. I just think we can do better. At least I hope we can. Thank you.
So we've heard a strong plea for more analysis of cost. We've heard from the consultants that, you know, quite frankly, it takes more than what they've budgeted to do it, and it would be very difficult from their perspective. And, you know, you can shoot me, I'm just the messenger here. There's, you know, for them to identify full cost for 5 options would be challenging. I think from the province, we've heard that for them to go to different departments and obtain what those costs are, you know, again, for several different options is challenging. I think we heard from Jim that we might want to be cautious about putting out one number, and maybe I'm putting words in your mouth here, but it seems to me no matter what number we put out, it's not going to be that number. Okay, it's going to be a different number. From my perspective, and I'm going to open the floor to comments in a minute here, I can see several of you waiting. From my perspective, our project is funded in a certain way. You know, I think we've kind of all got to get on the same page here and move forward one way, maybe with some blind faith, knowing that, you know, it's a true democracy. We're not all going to each get our own way of doing it. We've heard why we're doing it this way. We've heard why it might be better to do it a different way. So I want to open the floor. We're not going to have time for everybody to take 10 minutes here, but please take a moment or two if you wish now to try to speak to this point. Bob Daly, then I got Vi.
Yeah, thank you. I think one of the things we're focusing on cost, but one of the things we're forgetting about this study is the first part is looking at services. And part of this study is going to determine how satisfied are the communities with the services. If they are satisfied, then our consultants are certainly going to find this out, and then those communities may not want to be part of any incorporated community. If they're unhappy with the services, then they likely would want to be considered for another form of governance. And then somewhere along the way, they can see the costs of the improved services. And also there is the ultimate off-ramp on this process for all of the communities, and that's the referendum. And I don't think we should forget that. And that's all I've got to say on that, Matt. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Vi.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I can appreciate that we can't give people exact costs, but could we not say that in Sorrento it didn't go up, or it went up by 5%, or in some other community it went up by 5%, or it didn't go up at all? Like Ron, you were saying that some communities costs didn't go up. So you can say, okay, in this community, they've done this and there was no increase. In this community, it increased by 10%, and that other, you know, so we're not pinpointing any specific numbers, but giving people a kind of an idea of what it would be. That's all I'm going to say.
So actually, I'm going to put your question to Alan rather than Ron. Can you get examples from other incorporation studies and provide that? And would there be any benefit? Well, there would be benefit, be information.
Sure. So one of the things we'll be doing in this study, when we talk about a high level sense of costs and a high level sense of kind of impacts and what kind of, you know, a high level sense of incorporation and stuff, that's exactly what we talk about. We don't look necessarily to specific communities. We don't look to see, because every community is going to be different with its own set of services. We do though look at the dynamics that we learn about the services in Area D, and we can say that we know, for example, that there's a certain certain number of road kilometers. We know that there's a certain there's a certain approach with improvement districts. We know that there's a certain, we'll get to learn with the community. We'll get to learn about the services and their different characteristics and their costs. And we'll then have an opportunity to say, under a different form of government, under an incorporation, for example, in this area. This is what we did in the Sorrento Blind Bay before we got to the point of looking at boundaries. We were able to say that if we move to an incorporated status from where we are currently, we can expect these impacts. And that's based on what we know from other places. And we'll look at the clear waters, we'll look at those places. Frankly, I'm not aware of places that haven't had those cost increases. Sherry's comment, as far as I'm concerned, is completely accurate. That typically that is what happens. But that said, we want to be very cautious in how we put out information on costs, and we want to be clear that that incorporation does create different pressures because different responsibilities will shift from either provincial or from the regional district to a local, and there are implications for that. And in some cases, those implications are very positive for the area that is considering incorporation. In some places, they're more challenging. But I mean, I think that Bob put it perfectly when he kind of outlined the way that this process proceeds, and that we want to that if people choose based on their view of existing services and the concerns or the lack thereof that they have with those existing services, that they wish to consider some kind of incorporation, then we set the boundary and we explore that. It's quite simple. That's when you get into the detail. You can't get into the detail before that point.
Okay, thank you. I've got several people with questions here.
Sherry,
I've got Mylene, I've got Phyllis, and I've got Kay.
Matt,
So we're
Matt,
going.
can I just add to that just
Okay,
for
Sherry.
2 seconds? Sorry.
Yep.
Sorry. I just want to add that the circumstances of every community is going to be different. And when we do say, as Alan mentioned, that we have one of the incorporation insights is supposed to talk about those high level and some of those changes, because there are changes to how a municipality, like some things that they have access to, as Ron mentioned, that maybe regional districts don't. And there are some sources of revenue that an incorporated community has that the regional district doesn't. And so by virtue of the type of community and the type of uses in that community, whether it be industrial, or maybe they have some utilities, or there may be different revenue sources in Clearwater than in Okanagan Falls. But those are the types of things that we will be highlighting in those major impacts. We just aren't saying that instead of paying $98.40, you're paying $113.40 or $67. Like, we just can't say the number, but we will be highlighting for all the community during our process. And we have anticipated highlighting some of those impacts that you would consider, like, the longer your road network, the higher that cost is going to be for a community. Or yes, when you are incorporated, if you have, you do have a different tax on X, and therefore if you have some of that in your community, you'll have a new revenue source, but you might not if you don't have that use. Or anyway, so each community does have different circumstances. So that is true, but I just wanted to say that, yeah, we do plan on highlighting some of those things. We just can't provide you with the exact number to compare it to, but
For this area.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So what I'm hearing from the consultants is you can give us some examples of what costs have been before and after in an incorporated area. And I think that would be useful to look at. Okay, next I've got Mylene, and then I've got Phyllis and Kay. And Ron, we will get back to you as well.
We had spoke the meeting before, or even the one before that, about having a table that would have, on one axis, all the different communities, on the other axis, all the different services, so that you could, in a snapshot view, see what services each of those community has. Perhaps there could be at the bottom of a fact sheet, and perhaps on that table with those two axes, one maybe, I don't know if there's some way that you could have like an arrow going up, an arrow going down, or an arrow kind of staying the same. You don't have to get into the specific details, but I think what Ron is saying, I've heard a lot from people that it's all cost. I don't want to incorporate, it's going to cost more. I have other people saying exactly the same thing. The cost isn't going to go up. But I think if there were a chart that might help with communities as well to go, we don't have this service. We don't really want this service. If we did get this service, our rates would stay the same, go up or down. I know it would be very general, but it might give a really good indication as to which way those trends would go in a snapshot on a graph. That's my 2 cents worth.
Okay. It's an idea. I've got Phyllis next.
It seems like there's lots of good ideas about how we can come across with at least some kind of range, whether it's going up or down. Because I know out here at Vassal Lake and talking to people and just trying to have people open to the idea that we're doing an investigation here, is we're getting the same kind of information that people are negative about that. Right now, they're feeling like we're in a bit of a no man's land here. And, you know, we could definitely improve and have some more services or get more for what we're paying. But I think, you know, we have to look at giving people some kind of idea. Even no, I don't think anybody expects that it's going to be an exact number, but a little bit of a range. Just exactly what Mylene was talking about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I've got Kay.
I think it's important. Cost comes up anytime I have a discussion with everyone, but I'm hearing that it's not a realistic. It's not realistic to try and put some kind of dollar value on it. I do think it's important that we are being clear. It's just an exploration, and this is part of the exploration. And that if we're not happy, you know, Bob mentioned not being happy with governance or services, then if we want to improve services, looking at incorporation is an option. But from what I'm hearing today, there's other options that may not include incorporation to some of the areas as well, but still result in improved services. So I think that those are important factors that people are made aware of as well. That's it.
Okay. Any other questions from committee members? Okay, Ron, we have more agenda left here, so
Yes.
I'd like you to be fairly brief.
Thank you. And just real quick, first off, just for Alan, Alan, I have spoken to people who've gone through it in Clearwater, the mayors, attended workshops, and I know you don't have this experience, but what they've told me, their experience actually is the cost went up no different than if they had not been incorporated. They got some benefits where costs were down. Policing was a great example in Clearwater, to be specific. Now, we have Mr. Jim Zaffino here. He has told me in West Kelowna, they had a commitment to keep under 5%, first year 5%, next 3 years for 4 years, 3%. These are factual details from history. We don't have to guess. We can look at what their experience is. I've asked both those communities, would they like to go back to the way they were? They say no. The benefits far exceed any negative. Now, with respect to costs, costs can also go down. And this is something that needs to be identified as well. Right now, under the regional district system, we have one vote on one member on a board of 19, and a lot of the costs are pretty tough for us to control. If we had a municipal district, there are costs, I can be real specific on this if necessary, where I can show that some of the costs could come down. After municipal district, municipal status, you have the ability to not just increase costs, but actually decrease costs or indeed get better value for money. And that's that. So we have to be real careful. If we speak in generalities, as I heard Sherry say at the beginning, that typically it costs more, that is so vague and so harmful to the ear of people making a tough decision. I would rather give some comfort to people. They're already paying taxes. They're already getting services. a lot of those costs will not go up. Indeed, they may, in some cases, go down. And there may be a way to answer this question better without doing the expensive detailed analysis on one or more variations on a boundary. But the people who are in these communities who are paying these taxes, I think we're hearing from committee members a repeat of the concern. And I would like to be able to give them some comfort on answers that are based on historical, actual experiences, and not just scary speculations that costs are going to go up no matter what. And I'll tell you, that's what it sounds like when I hear Alan and Sherry. And Alan, I want to be respectful, but I've heard different things from communities that have gone through it than what I heard you say. I don't know what your experience is, but what I've heard is different than what you said. And that I don't mind being corrected. Indeed, I prefer it. If I'm wrong, I prefer to be corrected.
All right. So I'm going to allow Sherry and Alan to comment briefly, and then I'm going to make some comments. Then I think we're going to move on.
The one thing I just like to add that when we do go through an incorporation study, the one thing that we compare when we're comparing our incorporated area boundary to the status quo or whatever the other option is, we compare the same service and the same service levels as people are already getting. So when we say that the costs are likely to go up, or what we're trying to compare, or even if they're not going to change, and for sure there are services, even in the current study that we're underway, certain services, the cost of that service delivered under a different model by under an incorporation model, the cost of that specific service may actually be going down. So it does change based on the service. But when we do an incorporation study, we are trying to compare apples to apples. So even though we will try and we're using the fact that municipalities might have a different revenue source, and we take that into account, or you get different grants, we add all those things in, but the service levels remain the same. So when people want to know, will I get a different service, or that's not what the incorporation study looks at. It looks at your current level of services. So you're trying to compare apples to apples. So what happens after that may be that the municipality chooses not to provide a service or to add services. So after incorporation, it sometimes becomes very hard because you don't have the same service levels, you don't have the same menu of services. Maybe they're offering more, maybe they're offering less. But the incorporation study tries to equalize that and say, for the exact same services and the exact same service levels, what would the cost be under an incorporation model versus what you have today, or whatever your status quo is. So I just want to, just make sure that we're all referring to the same thing. So we're not necessarily looking at what the cost of that particular service is, but the same services, the same level of services bundled together, what would it cost in each option? So that's what you end up looking at when you go through an incorporation study. Whether or not that ends up being what happens after incorporation is a bit of a different story, but
And I think
that's all I have to add. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Chair, the only thing I can maybe add to that, or just expand on a little bit, is when we look at, Sherry's quite right, that when we look at individual services, each service is going to be a little bit different, and that's going to depend on the nature of the service. So, whether it's kind of got infrastructure involved, or whether it's purely kind of a process-related service or a regulatory service, is going to depend on the assessment base in the particular boundary that is being developed. So does that assessment, so when we develop a boundary, when we put forward a recommended boundary, we try not only to include, obviously, the areas that are interested in exploring at a deeper level incorporation, but we also try to make sure that certain features are included within that boundary. So in terms of assessment base, diversity of assessment base, we try to ensure that there's a limited class 9 farmland, because there's more of an impact there. We tried to ensure that we've got limited road network, because the more roads we take on, the more difficult it is to control those costs. But so there's all these different factors that need to be taken into account, even when you're creating the boundary, in order to develop the costs, in order even to determine in some cases whether the costs are going to be going up or going to be going down, just in terms of order of magnitude. We can. One of the other points, though, too, I think that Ron mentioned, which I think, and others have mentioned too, which I think is a very valid point, is that irrespective of costs, but also when we are thinking about costs, there is another issue that is important to consider, and that is kind of the governance side of things. So the control, because as an electoral area in a regional district, as Ron mentioned, you're one voice on a larger board. Every decision that is made for services within Area D is going to involve at least one other voice from elected official from another area. And in a lot of cases, it's going to involve several voices from different areas. And so that's a factor that resonates with people. And so there's kind of the cost issue has to be considered kind of in the context of the bigger picture as it relates to governance and who controls and who makes decisions for the community. And if we've talked about West Kelowna a little bit tonight, when we look at West Kelowna, I mean, that's a classic example where when that incorporation study was done, there were three different options that were looked at. There was the status quo, there was join the city of Kelowna, and there was incorporate as your own municipality. By far, the largest, the highest cost projections were attributed to the incorporate as your own municipality, and yet people in West Kelowna chose that because the idea of having control over their own community decisions, over their planning, over their road network, over all of their decisions was that important to folks in West Kelowna that they were willing to take those extra costs. So that's when we start to talk about kind of decision making, that's going to be important and who controls those decisions. But just to kind of finish the discussion, perhaps as it relates to costs, it's a slippery slope comparing an area for which we don't even have a defined boundary to other areas that have developed through a rigorous process, a boundary with a particular assessment base, a particular feature and characteristics in order to limit cost impacts. It's difficult to kind of point to those places and say, they've done it. So this is great. This is what we can expect. We can't expect that necessarily. Maybe it'll happen that way, maybe it won't. But as David mentioned, we go through the process of choosing a boundary so that we can get the proper costs and speak about them with some degree, a high degree of certainty, and that's important for folks to understand, because as others have said on this webcast tonight, once we put numbers out there, we want to be sure that those numbers are meaningful. We can talk in general terms. We can talk about order of magnitude, that we would expect certain costs to go up for certain services and we would expect savings in other services. And we can talk about that, but to get into a degree of accuracy is going to be very difficult to put forward. It's going to be impossible to put forward without a close boundary, and it's going to be dangerous to put forward, in my view.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Heard a lot of comments here. I'm going to make a couple of quick comments, and then I think we're going to move on, and hopefully we're more on the same page than we were when we started this conversation. First point I'm just going to say is I know we've heard from people who are concerned about cost, but I think we've all heard from people who have told us they would happily pay some more for some more control and some more input, and a sense that decisions are being made a little more locally. And I think that ties to Bob's comment and some of Ron's comments and Alan's, that it has to be more than just cost. I mean, if this is just a cost thing, then the answer is simple. Put yourself outside the line, because it might go down, but it's more likely to go up. You're going to get a lot more value. You're going to get better value, but you're probably going to pay more. So if we turn it into just a cost discussion, I think we're going to have to change the number because we're not going to guess it right now. And then we're going to, well, yeah, that's what we said before. We knew all the facts and now we know more. So the number's different. But I think there's more to this discussion. There has to be more to this discussion than just, can we do this for cheaper? Okay, we're trying to give these people more. Everybody I've heard, they don't go into the incorporation study. All the people that are got concerns about development or policing or whatever, they're not asking for lower taxes. They're asking for more policing or better highways or, more control over that. So all of that said, I think there are some suggestions, things we can certainly look at within a committee. Maybe we can look at what, some of the other areas have paid before and after. Maybe that would be helpful to us. Maybe that will give us more confidence. I'm going to suggest that we move on. I know this is an important point, but my hope is that we've discussed it at some length, and within our group, we're perhaps going to get access to, what's been the experience in other communities, et cetera, that have gone this road. But hopefully we're also going to be pushing back on our, people that are asking the question, well, if you just want a cheaper vehicle, you can probably do that. But if you want more value, if you want more input, then you would start looking at this process. So, all right, Alan.
I beg your pardon, Mr. Chair. Thank you. And I don't mean to prolong the discussion.
Yeah.
You've done a nice job of wrapping it up and we're ready to move on. I appreciate that. That said, I wonder if, I just think because this topic has come up tonight, it's at length, and because it came up at the last meeting, I wonder if it's possible, if we can request perhaps even that the committee kind of, endorse the process that has been set out, that has been funded by the province, this path that we're on, because I fear that if we keep coming back to this issue time and time again, it's going to really distract us and make this study very difficult to complete.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more on that one. But at the same time, Alan, and I appreciate, we'd like to just put this issue to bed tonight, but I'd like to just say, let's revisit the process as one agenda item at the start of next meeting. I think we've aired it and we've thrashed it about. I come from the horse sector and the cattle sector, and I think, frankly, we've beaten it to death, I hope. And I hope we have some respect for the issues that each, faction is trying to put on the table. But my hope would be that, my suggestion would be, and I'll just put this to the group, if I see a bunch of concerned faces, then we'll have a vote now. But my suggestion is we give the consultants, myself and our director perhaps, and staff an opportunity to sort of frame a question to you. Can you live with the process as we've mapped it out? And can we move forward? And Alan, I think you're absolutely right. If we're constantly looking back and if we're constantly expressing our concern about this, it will leak out. And that's my concern. And I know that's a concern of others as well. So having said that, I'm going to ask if we can move on. We've got two quick pieces here on communications and engagement. And I know there's some specific recommendations. I'm going to suggest right now, we're going till 8 o'clock. So let's try to keep it short. And, I deliberately wanted to let this past topic run its course, but I would like to wrap up these other 2 points fairly quickly. So Okay, Alan, or Sherry, if you want to speak to the points on communication and engagement.
Sure. Yeah, I can speak to that. I don't have anything for Alan for you to put up, so you can have a rest on this one. But I just wanted to let everyone know that and they were in the agenda, but there has been 2 ads so far in the SCAHA matters. And I just wanted maybe the committee to think a little bit about what process they would like for how the ads and other communications get approved. At this point, yeah, there's already been 2 of those in there. And I think, I actually don't know, the first one was before the consultants even came on, but this, the second ad, we prepared together with the chair and before it went to SCAHA Matters. But yeah, so there's obviously a deadline every month of around the 20th. So I don't know if there's a way that the committee wants to endorse something the meeting before, and then it gets prepared together. Alan and I can put something together and then have the chair look at it, and then it gets approved by RDOS before it goes there. And if you guys are comfortable with that process, or if you would like to see something different, but that's one of my items on my list. Yeah, and maybe we'll just, does anyone have any comments or thoughts about that process before I
Okay,
have
so
a few other points?
in terms of process, I think, can we identify something at a meeting and then subsequently have a draft prepared, whether it's Sherry and Alan, and they put it to myself and Mylene. RDOS has got to also have some control of that before it's released as well. I think there will be times when Mylene may have a suggestion and just say, yeah, this is what you got to write about,
Yeah, as long as the committee is comfortable with whatever the process is, I just don't, feel good about us preparing something when the committee doesn't know what it's going to be on, or yeah.
I
Go
have
ahead,
just,
Kay. Okay, I've got
Sorry.
Kay, and then, all right, let's go Mylene and then Kay.
was going to interject in, the proof is prepared. I can CC all the committee members on it so they see the proof before it's approved, if that makes a difference. Yeah, the deadline is the 20th every month. So as long as I have direction from either RDOS or the consultants, then I can put that together at any time during the month. Maybe it would be handy to have the ad space in with the agenda, so it can be one of included on the agenda each meeting. I'm open to whatever you guys would like to do.
Just a suggestion. I think it's a great idea to sort of put what the theme of the communication is out to the committee, but I think trying to get the whole committee to take a look at it before it goes out, you're going to get umpteen suggestions and you'll never know which version to go with. That would be my concern with that.
I think that's a good point, Mr. Chair, if I may. And I think that sending out the themes or communicating the themes is excellent. I think then the committee is not only has a chance to comment on the themes, but also has a chance then to be informed as to what's coming out and to kind of keep in the loop, as it were. But I think also that that under our committee terms, you as chair, Mr. Chair, you kind of speak for the committee. So I think as long as we're bouncing it off of you, I think we're probably on safe ground.
Okay, I've got Kay next, and I'm just going to turn the lights on. So
I guess I think it's important with regards to some language that we have an opportunity to provide input with some of the language, clean up some of the phrases. And I think that more than one or two heads creates a better product, but that's just my thought.
okay, good input. I don't mind working with one or two people, but I just, there's just no way we can have this article written by the committee. So that's
Then can I volunteer?
I'd love it. I'd love
I'd love to
it.
volunteer to proofread. Thanks.
Okay, good. Bob, I see you staring intently at the screen here and you're going to burn holes in it. Do you have anything to say on this? Hello, Bob, you're on mute. Nope. Okay. Okay, so we're going to identify themes, ideally from, the preceding meeting. We'll put that out. This is the article or the ad will be on this topic. Okay. We'll get content. I will share it with Kay. We'll work on that side of it, and we'll get Christie's approval before we run it through Mylene. I can say just from my own personal experience, Mylene can add significantly to the process. So Mylene, if you have a suggestion in terms of theme, that's always welcome. Okay. Okay.
Great. So, and then just on the other like key documents, obviously, and we've spoken about this a little bit already, but all the fact sheets, the incorporation insights, the overview, anything that gets mailed out to the public, those all come to the committee for approval before they go out. So we're just really speaking about the SCAHA matters. So the other things will be coming to the committee. And then the other question that came up last meeting was the idea about social media. So one of the ideas is to, if committee members want to use other Facebook avenues, which are probably better used and frequent forms of communication, there was the idea that, what can we put out there? Because obviously we're just putting our content on the RDOS Regional Connections website. But the idea came up that maybe committee members who are involved in these other Facebook groups could post excerpts either from the SCAHA matters or maybe from the FAQs that are on the website already. So these are communications that have already sort of been prepared. Rather than using your own words, you're taking something directly from the regional district regional communication or regional connections website and posting them on Facebook, and then again with the link to drive them to the website, or posting again the whole SCAHA matters ad and using that again to drive traffic to the website. So is that something that the committee would approve of having committee members again be involved in these other social media aspects where they're driving traffic back to the website by using content that essentially is already there? Anyone have any thoughts? Anyone not okay with
I think I'm seeing
having
some
committee
heads
members?
nodding.
Yeah.
I guess one concern I would have is I don't want to create a social media problem. So my thinking is if we had sort of a weekly or bi-weekly Q&A that, was straight off of the regional connections and sort of summarized things and said, hey, if you want more of this, go to regional connections, or the ad or a diagram. But then if we can identify who are the half a dozen people on the committee who can get that posted on the 7, 8, or 9 Facebook pages, that would be all they would do. I wouldn't see them responding to a bunch of questions on those pages. Now, that's from a Facebook neophyte. So Mylene, over to you.
My suggestion would be that the content is generated and posted by the regional district on the regional district Facebook page. Then it would be reposted by community members that are in private groups, such as the Okanagan Falls News and Event, the Okanagan Falls Community Forum. Perhaps it gets posted onto the Okanagan Falls Community Association page. So all of the metrics, all of the content is driven and posted by regional district staff and has that level of professionalism put in behind it. It isn't for back and forth content or communications or trying to mitigate any sort of misinformation. It's just a factual post by the regional district, then reposted into private group pages that the regional district doesn't have access to, but community members do. And what it would do is just send people back, if they clicked on it, right to the Regional Connections web page where all that information is. It's just another clickable point for community engagement, not for community members to have to go back and forth at 2 a.m. with disgruntled community neighbors.
That's exactly what I want to see.
Well said.
Okay, I've got
Sorry,
we've
Kate.
got-
Is it not possible to wait, if we were to post something, to turn off the comments so that people can't comment on whatever's been posted, so that that would be our practice? I don't know. Is it possible to turn off comments when you post something, so there will be no back and forth? It would just, for more information, and there's the link. Does anyone know? Because
Just to-
I'm,
Sorry, just to jump in, I think it depends on the platform. So for example, Facebook, I don't think you can turn off comments. For like Instagram, you might be able to. But it's a good question. I don't like, so Facebook is the main social media access point that it's being thought of right now. I don't believe you can turn off comments there. It's a free for all, I believe.
You
Again,
can
if someone
turn
is
off,
more,
you can turn off comments on your own page that you own, but once it's in a social group, it's up to the administrator that's running that group to moderate comments that are being said. So it is putting it out there, but it certainly helps to drive traffic. That's where if all the community were a member of the Rdos Facebook page, then there could be no comments back and forth. But once you start reposting it to community groups, that's where you get the chatter. So it's up to the administrators of those pages.
Okay. Cognizant of time here. I'm gonna, first off, I think Mylene summarized the way this would work, providing more detail to Sherry's suggestion. What I think we need is, what are all the Facebook pages that we want to try to regularly access, and who might be able to do the posting there? So I'm just going to invite committee members to email the consultants and CC Crystal on Facebook pages, and who might be the sort of poster to that. And maybe we could do it in the next couple of days, so that early next week, Crystal could have an understanding of, you know, what are we dealing with here? 3 pages, 3 Facebook sites, or more likely 8 or 9. Okay, and have an idea of who the link is in each case. All right, but in terms of an overall plan, what do you think of Mylene's suggestion? Just thumbs up, thumbs down? All right, okay, good enough.
Okay, great. The last thing we wanted to touch on is it's a bit of a work in progress, because Christy's on vacation right now, so she hasn't had a chance to get back to me to confirm the list of services. But Alan, if you can just pull up that list of services. I just wanted to give you guys a heads up.
Just give me a second here.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Now I apologize. The list is whereabouts is that? Is that in the package?
Yeah, it's It's in the folder that you think, the agenda folder that
Oh,
you
okay.
have
Yeah.
access to. It's not in the
Okay.
package because it's a work in progress, but I just wanted to
Okay.
give them an idea of the schedule of the fact sheets coming forward.
Okay, it's not there. So just a minute. I'm just trying to, sorry, where would I find that? Sherry, I beg your pardon. I misunderstood what I was looking for there
Okay, so in the,
in the Dropbox.
yeah, Dropbox agendas, September 8th. There's our RDOS fact sheet schedule draft.
Okay, just 1 second here, please. I'm sorry, I don't see it in there.
Okay, I will.
I'm just looking at all the different files in there.
Email
Yet. I
it
don't
to
see
you.
it. Okay.
Sherry, it's Crystal. I just wanted to update you. I am almost done. I'm just clarifying 2
Awesome.
items on there for you. So
Awesome. Thank
hopefully
you.
tomorrow. Thanks.
Yeah, it's all good. Okay.
Is that
you
coming?
should
It's
have
coming
it
there. Okay.
now. So what you will be seeing in just a minute. Just a second. Now I'm back to Zoom.
Just while you're mucking about there, I would just like to express my thanks to the consultant and RDOS for agreeing to shift to Zoom. I just think we're all probably more familiar with it. And so thanks. If there was a little bit of give and take there, whoever gave, I appreciate it. Thank you.
I don't see anything, Sherry.
You didn't just get an email?
I haven't yet. No.
Okay. Are you?
Have you got it there? Why don't you put it on screen?
Yeah. why don't
Okay, can you share?
Sherry share screen?
There you go. Go ahead.
Okay. Let me open
I've got it now.
it.
Do you want me to share it? I'll share it.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So this is the list of services that Area D receives, and some of them, some of those services are shared with them or are provided to all of Area D, and some of them are only to portions of Area D. So that's the work in progress. I'm just confirming. I don't know the service area boundaries for some of these services. But we've grouped them here in a by fact sheet based on the fact sheets that were prepared for the 2016 services study for Area D. So we've sort of kept those same or similar headings and grouped the services there. And so what we're hoping, because there is, I think, a total of 14 fact sheets and then 3 what we've been calling incorporation insights. And so we've got a schedule here where we provide about 5 fact sheets and 1 insight for each of the 3 meetings leading up to the end of the year. So 5 fact sheets and 1 insight in October, another 5 in November, with the remainder in December. So again, this isn't, yeah, I don't know that it matters which sheets you get when, but I just wanted to provide you with a schedule so you know that what to anticipate coming up in October. And the only ones I thought that maybe someone might have comments on is whether there's any difference on the incorporation insights. Again, we've talked about doing the high level incorporation impacts and talking about some of those major changes that you would have in the first incorporation insight. So bringing that one first. Second would be the incorporation study process, but I know, again, seeing as we've been talking about the process a little bit, maybe we want to switch those, I'm not sure. And then the last one being some of the municipal boundary considerations and talking a little bit about why those are, what goes into figuring out a municipal boundary and why. Is there anyone who wants to reorder those incorporation insights as to which one comes first? Alan, did you want to leave it up or?
Okay,
I can-
comment by Kay.
It seems to me that explaining a process, explain what the process needs to come before explaining what the high level incorporation impacts would be. So first, this would be the process that we would undertake while exploring incorporation. And second would be the high level impact that such an incorporation may be, but that's just the way my brain works.
Yeah, happy to reorder that if that's the committee's wish.
Other thoughts? I can tell it's already after the original adjourn time. Okay, Ron?
Yeah.
I'd sure like to see water moved up closer to the top of the list. I think water is a really, really important one. You know, and we're in a drought season right now. It's going to carry on for a while. So I'd like to see water moved up.
I'd like to see this document, that one pager circulated.
Yeah.
Because to be honest, I can't get my head around this while I'm multitasking here myself.
Fair enough. And
But it's a good start, you know?
Just to give you a sense, so I mean, obviously all of the services are important. They're not ranked in order of importance. You're going to get to all of them, and the public will get to see all of them at the end of the day. Some of it's even just time management for us. We have a longer process before October. We have a 5-week chunk before our next meeting versus other months when we only have 4. So it's not, you know, there are some sheets that will take more effort than others. So we can't stick all of those in the same month is really part of our thinking. So happy to move water, but yes, just a caution that you can't just choose which ones you want to do in 1 month, because that might not work for us.
So you're suggesting you can't just put sewer down at the bottom, is that right?
Something like that.
Okay.
Some of the sheets are
Did
more
I see
difficult than others.
any other hands raised here? Ron, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question arising, and I love the fact sheets. Can't wait to see the final product. Under the regional district system, the people in Area D pay differently depending on what service they receive. So Area D doesn't pay for everything because they don't receive the same services as somebody in a different area. When I say Area D, I mean Upper Carmi, for example. Upper Carmi may not pay this for the same services as another area because they don't receive the service, they don't pay for it. My question is on municipal incorporation. And for the sake of the question, just assume the boundary is identical to what it is now. Would a municipality have the same approach to those different services? So if Upper Carmi was receiving exactly the same services, is that all they would pay for? Or would they have to pay for something else that they don't pay for under the regional district system? And I appreciate the question may be complicated given that there's different water utilities and those are ratepayers only, which may be a carve away. But there are services right now that are on the taxes that are different in different communities. And I'm wondering, after municipal incorporation, does that stay the same or does it change? And if it changes, how so? Thanks.
Alan, I'm going to let you take a run at this, but I am also going to say that this is a good table. I've got questions. We're going to have to come back to this. I'm not going to try to hammer through this one.
And Jim Zaffino might know the answer because Jim has done it before.
At this point, I'm going to take a response from Alan, and then I think we're going to
Sure.
on.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yes, in some cases, the services will be provided municipal wide. And so taxpayers won't, if they are not getting a particular service now, and it becomes a service then for the municipality, then they would pay for that. Now that's not by any stretch across the board. So as Ron mentioned, we've got our utilities, which right away are going to be unique because they've got their own service areas. But we've also got, in some cases, streetlights, which some would kind of classify more as utility, but they tend to be funded less through parcel taxes, more through value taxes in some cases. So the more kind of non-utility features there. You can have local services, local service areas. So some municipalities will kind of continue to provide services to a particular area that can be, limited to that particular area. So it's more difficult to do, for example, if you have parks. So if you have parks, which you can't discriminate among users for parks. And so that one, if you don't currently have the entire Area D paying towards a park service, and a municipality took over that park service, you likely would have the entire municipality paying for that park service. So it really depends on the nature of the service. There are, what was I going to say else on that? Oh, when we, it goes just circling back to the boundary question, when we do kind of set up a proposed boundary for an incorporation area, one of the key criteria that we look at is service areas, not only for utilities, but for fire service, for example. So we try to, whenever possible, keep a service area within a boundary, and ideally even in a service like fire, make the service area the same as the fire service area. So in a lot of cases, like for example, there was a big restructure initiative in the Caribou area around Quesnel, and there were 4 different areas that wanted to look at joining the city of Quesnel, which would have quadrupled the population of Quesnel. And in that case, the 4 areas, the 4 distinct areas, one in the north, one in the south, one in the east, and one in the west, those areas kind of joined as complete fire service areas, and that's how the boundary was determined. And then they kind of, the idea was they would be amalgamated then into one fire service, so you'd pay the same service throughout. So there's those questions, but I think just to focus on the specific question, it really depends on the nature of the service. In some cases, you'll have the entire municipality paying. In other cases, you'll get more of a specific service area, and you can have local service areas within municipalities.
Okay. Are there other questions before I suggest we table this for further discussion at the next meeting? Okay, we'll bring that back. I don't think, consultants, you've got anything else specific? We do have one more agenda item here. Okay, you're good? All right. You sure you don't want to go one more, you guys? All right. We've got one member from the public, Judy Garner. We deliberately make ourselves available to the public, and we're really happy that a member of the public has joined to observe. Perhaps in time we'll have more. So Judy, if you have a comment or a question that you'd like us to hear or answer either tonight or at a subsequent meeting, now is your time. If you can find the mute button. Okay, Judy, I'm going to give you 1 minute here.
I've asked Judy to unmute it. Oh, there we go. Perfect.
It was very interesting. I found the whole meeting very interesting and thought it was very well conducted, Matt. So I'll come back and listen to the next one.
Okay. Feel free to put a positive comment in on Regional Connections. Anywhere else, speak. Invite others. Okay.
I did have Bob Duffield and was here with me tonight. So you actually had 2 listeners.
Okay. All right. 2 accountants. Holy doodle. Okay. We're at that time of the day where I'd look for a motion to adjourn. Okay, I got a motion made by Vi to adjourn. I think it's seconded by Kay. So a motion made and seconded is accepted. We're adjourned. Thank you very much.